Alrighty-o, so I just looked at the new updated regulations. FIA Article 253 is going to give you all of your information for where all these tubes have to be and what your dimensions have to be and your materials and etc, etc. So conveniently for me, they released an update in 2020 mandating new bars. Alright, so it's super duper important that this ultra strong and lightweight composite green piece of tape is within 100 millimeters of the junction between the tube that runs along the top of the windscreen and the one that runs along the A-pillar. Alright, so first thing we're going to do is mark our center line on the main hoop here. And our center line is, whoop, there you go, 20 inches. We got 10 centimeters there, 10 centimeters there. So we've got the car rolled outside to give us a bit more space to work in the garage. And these are the tools you're going to need. You're going to need something to mark with. You're going to need a angle grinder with a depressed grinding wheel. We don't want one that's optimistic by any stretch of the imagination. And you're going to need a chop saw with a metal disc. One last thing you will need is a tape measure. It's definitely going to come in handy for notching tubes. Okay, so I'm going to run you through a quick little crash course on how I notch tubing outside of the car, just because it's going to be a little bit easier to demonstrate when everything's in a nice flat plane. Let's say I've got these two pipes that I want to notch to this angle here. So first thing you're going to do is you're going to draw two lines. One is a center line of the tube, which you're going to want to mark to the other side and in your quarters. And the next mark is the actual angle at which it meets the second piece of tubing. Once you've drawn this line here, you're going to want to extend it to the other, call it the other quarters of the tube. So we have the angle at which we want the two tubes to meet. The next thing you're going to want to do, and this takes just a little bit of math. So our tubing diameter is 1 3/4. Because two pieces of tube will never meet halfway to the next tube, they typically meet at around 1/3 of the way through the tube diameter. This is just due to wall thicknesses, etc. So what you're going to want to do is you're going to want to take the diameter of the tube and divide that by 3. So in our case, because it's 1 3/4 tube, 5/8 gives us roughly 1/3, and we mark that right here. And the next thing you're going to want to do with that marked, you're going to want to draw a line from the 1/3 to the corner, 1/3 to the corner. And that's going to look something like this. So now we have this. So that line that the arrows are pointing towards, that's the line that we want to cut in our chop saw. So those center lines you drew earlier, you're going to want to make sure that when you look at it from the top, that you're as close to vertical as possible. If you're askew a little bit, you're going to end up with angles that aren't quite what you desire. So here's what that tube looks like after we've cut both those angles that we drew. Now you can see if I take this tube, if I take it and meet it up, we're much closer now. Ideally, you want to go in here with the angle grinder, you want to clean up the corners, and typically you are going to want to bevel inside a little bit to get a perfect fit. So here's precisely where things get complicated. We're not really dealing with angles in the same plane, and it's very difficult for me to scribe those markings we were talking about earlier. So in this case, because I still want the angle between this tube and the one that I'm trying to cut, I don't want to mark it on this side because I'm going to be losing all that excess. So what we're going to do is we're going to mark down here, which will give us our angle, and we're going to mark that center line on the top side. So this is what we got. We have it clamped in this vise, which sits a little higher than my chop saw. It sits a little higher than my chop saw. So we got this with the nails not in the way to keep it up so it doesn't move around. It's nice and sturdy. We're going to have to hold that. Basically, where we ended up with the angle, there we go. That's along the lines of what I wanted to show you. So we're going to try to we're going to rip through this and we're going to see what that looks like in the car. Yes, sir. This is with the piece. You can see it's starting to fit a little bit better. However, you can see we're a long ways away from a nice cope. We have, in car, we got a little bit of a gap up here We got material down here, which is the reason why you leave tons of excess, so you can make this meet the other tube perfectly. So we're going to cut to what this looks like a little farther along. So you can see the way that the shape has changed quite a bit, which is why the chop saw will get you most of the way there, but you will have to do some grinding. And here it is with the tube. Now let's do the other side. Reason you want to plan out where you start and where you finish coping your tubes is because this angle here is a lot trickier to get right than the one up there. So that one there should be a little bit easier. Mark off your line, clamp her down, get ready to cut. Check the fit, little gap on this side, material on this one. So we'll grind that one down, close that gap. Grinder, I barely know her. Beauty. 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 Bonus round. Hell yeah, brother. So we're just gonna use this one as a template, make the exact same copy, see what it looks like with two of these suckers in the car. So I'm gonna use this piece of cardboard and transcribe that curve onto the new tube that we're making, so we can get to our to the end faster. Nice and tight. Time to start on the other end. I've just quickly marked up where the new tubes are landing on the old painted parts of the cage. So we're gonna raw those up really quick and tack weld our new bars in place. Just like that, progress.